So this is the City of Helena Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council meeting, January 9th, 2024. Welcome everybody here in attendance. We have myself, Greg Worth, Kevin Reckoff, Lucas Wallace, David Knopke with the City of Helena. And then online we have James Serwo, just worked. Why isn't anybody seeing it?
Is there anybody in the meeting? I'm not sure what happened.
There.
Yeah, it seems like they're working on it. Hey, we can hear you guys now.
Not sure why the camera's not working.
Yeah, I can hear you guys now.
Okay. Dave's trying to get our large monitors operating here.
Or the camera, so they can see. If you want to go ahead and talk, so we don't waste it on that.
Yeah. Why don't we jump ahead here? First thing is, David, your report. We'll let you kind of work there. Sarah is not here, so we'll defer, any discussion about the walk audit that was done last month. We can defer that, table that for future discussion.
Did we lose everything again?
Yeah, seems like we lost audio again.
I don't know why the camera's blank. It shows. Okay.
Motion sensor.
Something in there. There we go.
There. Are we fully functional? Okay. All right. Well, why don't we, Lieutenant Zander, do you have any report for us this month?
I do. So I just did a quick look up on stats for the last month, since the last meeting. And
Ellie
since
turned off his,
Now I can see is
turned his mic on.
James,
Oh.
can you hear us?
can you guys hear me?
who can hear us raise their hand.
Are you not able to, is anybody able to hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
That's just weird.
Is it working now?
It is.
yes.
Yes.
I hear you.
All right. Okay, so in the last, I pulled some stats just to look at crash data for the last month since the last meeting. And during that time, we've had 101 reported non-injury crashes. That's within the city limits. 24 injury crashes. We did have one vehicle versus pedestrian at the intersection of 11th and Sanders. And in that, the driver was cited for fail to yield to a pedestrian. And then we did also have a motorcycle fatality over on Euclid.
Okay. And all those, the non-injury, those are all vehicle on vehicle accidents. Is that
So unfortunately, with our system, it's pretty outdated. The only way I can actually look is if I open each one of those individually and read through the notes and the comments. For 100 of them, it would have probably taken me 2 days. So going through the 24 injury crashes, I figure if it's going to be a pedestrian, the likelihood of it being non-injury are pretty slim, but it's possible. But I did not open up all those all the non-injury crashes to review those.
sure? Is that about typical per month as far as total accidents?
You know, I would say it's pretty average. Yes.
Lieutenant Zander, the pedestrian involved accident at, you said it was 11th and Sanders, is that right?
Correct.
Is that where the new, like near the Taco Bell right there where the new cut through went through? Is that the best verbiage to use? But is that right?
That's where
Vandalay, I believe, is the road. Yes.
Do you know if someone crossed 11th right there?
So my understanding of that is, I looked at it pretty quickly. I was trying to go through these stats, is that the person was crossing in the crosswalk and a person was making a right-hand turn and they didn't look to the right, and that person was crossing and hit him in the crosswalk.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
great. Appreciate the information. Do you have anything else?
Nothing else comes to mind right now. Certainly here for questions.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Zander?
Nope.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought that was somebody asking a question.
And then let's see, we have Mr. Craig Puchat on here from, you're with FWP, is that correct?
Yeah, hello, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I don't make these meetings regularly, but I'm here today. So if I can help out, let me know, and I certainly will.
Okay, do you have anything to report on behalf of FWP at all?
Everything on the non-motorized accessibility issues has been good. No problems. So
Right.
sounds like we're having a little better job than the city of Helen is right now.
Just gonna leave it there.
Can you guys hear us?
Can you see us?
I can hear you.
It's showing the David's Docking screen.
Okay. Well, I guess that's what we got.
Okay. All right, well, let's move back up. David, for city staff report.
So the sidewalk summit was on the 4th. We think it went well. The commission asked us to, so we gave them an example of 1,000-foot radius around Central School and what needed to be fixed and what was missing. And so they wanted us to do that for the rest of the schools within the city. So we'll be working on doing that and just coming up with costs. We're still refining a few of the components in there, but the cost should be fairly close, but we'll wait until most of those are done before we do that. But yeah, any questions on the sidewalk summit?
Have you done anything to validate the data that they gave you? Does it look like it's accurate?
So we've been doing random checks, and that's where we're still working on some. So like, if there was any amount of or even just some rocks from some landscaping kicked into the ramp, the computer, when they extracted that, took that as a damaged ramp. So even though the ramp was perfectly fine, so there's little things like that that they're tweaking with their extraction methods. And with the field verifications, we did go out and find a few that were a little bit off. So they've decided to go back through and double check their extraction. But for the most part, what we found is, you know, they might read a 1.8% cross slope, and we have a 1.9 or a 1.8. I mean, that's the accuracy that they're taking the LiDARs on a millimeter basis, and it can cut up a panel into a lot more sections than we can, and it takes the biggest slope that it finds in any one of those sections. So there's actually, you know, spots out there that had found something that may be a 2.2, but we calibrate our level and go out there and find and look, and it's, you know, we can only find 2.1. So I think it's not a failing, but we have almost too much information to where the computer can break it down to a lot more minute sections than we can with a level that has a, you know, an inch width that we set it down on. We did find a couple little anomalies that, you know, where we had maybe we found one that had like a 14% cross slope, and we're like, that would have never got by. Well, what happened was we went out and looked, and it was a ramp that got installed a while ago, but it was concave a bit. So from edge to edge, it was fine, but there was a little bit of concave in there. And so when it did its cross sections, it found the worst slope was 14%. So kind of interesting.
What about the gaps in the sidewalk? I guess I wasn't really expecting that they would have all that, but it seemed like they did pretty good finding identifying where there are gaps, where there's sidewalk.
Yeah, so we've been more focused on the ramps. but the gaps, they did find all the gaps. There's probably a few in there that, the biggest thing that we're doing with the gaps is it's noticed as a gap, but it doesn't come up in like a construction plan because a gap isn't an asset. So we're having, what they've thought that they could do is convert those gaps to assets so that when we look at a corridor, it'll actually bring up that asset as being missing and then apply a cost to the sidewalk so that we won't have to do two separate screens.
What about sidewalk that exists that's just so damaged?
So that it examined all that, and it brings up spots that are damaged or the section of sidewalk that's damaged. And if it gets if the cross slope is bad all the way across, then the whole section gets labeled as bad. So it just kind of depends on what damage. Width is another one. If it doesn't have meet the 5-foot minimum, it gets flagged as non-compliant. So
Do you have to pay like a subscription to keep access to all this data?
yeah, for them to maintain the data. So
Do you know what that ends up being like?
it ends up being about what we were paying for City Works. So it's pretty much a wash. We just moved all our asset tracking into Adapt and took it out of City Works. So that's when they collected all our road data, our section data, all the signs, all the pavement markings, all that got just put into Adapt instead of City Works.
So it's not gonna all get dumped into the Lewis and Clark GIS open data stuff. It's all kind of in its own.
It's in its own space, but the Adapt will have its public facing side. So
We'll be able to look at it.
yeah, there'll be not all the information will be in there because we do have, some information just like the GIS stuff that we can't release, but most of it will be in there. So like if you get a notice that your sidewalk is out of compliance, you can go in there and see what the issues are, even though they'll be outlined in the letter as well.
Is there like next steps, like when are information will be presented back to the commission, because they're talking about possibly this budget cycle?
So we're looking at potentially giving them a list of the non-compliance issues and the cost, estimated cost for the schools, maybe the first meeting in February. There won't be a sidewalk summit per se, it'll just be a report back to them, and then they can, I guess, decide from there.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
When do you think that public access will?
Once we get the data cleaned up, hopefully within the next few weeks.
So we can see what we paid for.
Well, I think it would be helpful for us to see the gaps and stuff.
Yeah, I'd be super interested in that. So
Okay, moving on, 5-point intersection.
So we're just in the preliminary stages of collecting some information for the 5-point intersection. They're getting a topo so that we can see what we have and where we have it, and then we'll be going out to some public meetings to look at. But we are proceeding with the recommendation from the 5-point study around about there. If I can get my way, we'll try to find more money or allocate more money and do not only the 5-point, but also the intersection up at the Civic Center and change that from a light to a roundabout, and then do a road diet between the two. So that whole runway of asphalt down Neal there in front of the Reserve and Women's and Hills Park, basically squish that all in, so that there's just a 2-lane road. with the appropriate facilities, whatever those are deemed to be, but narrow that up. MDT won't let us put angle parking to try to, squeeze and create traffic calming by that way. So if they're not gonna let us do that, then we'll just add to the parks and make a big boulevard through there and put some trees in there and make it a little bit more inviting than a sea of asphalt either.
Is the fire department worried? Not concerned about doing it?
Because we'll still maintain that turnaround for them.
Okay.
That's in some respect. So
What's MDT's hang up on urban design practices?
your guess is as good as mine.
Well, and that's where I think if Helena thinks that angled parking is the best for our city,
Well, here's my. There's a very few events downtown that angle parking would even be used on a daily basis. It wouldn't be used, so we wouldn't get the benefits of that traffic calming. And since we want the traffic calming, the next or the best step, my feeling is to squish the roadway down, get rid of some of that asphalt, turn it back to green space, and then we'll have that narrower roadway to promote traffic calming. We get trees on both sides, we get even tighter.
You're saying we just end up with angled spaces that aren't used 85% of the time anyways, yeah.
and it's fairly steep
It is.
there
It is.
too, other than right at, it gets congested there on the farmer's market.
Farmers market and then civic center events sometimes would spill over, but again, that's one day a week in the summertime, and kind of hit and miss for events for overflow. So that's where we were kind of just like, well, then our best step is to just get rid of the asphalt and narrow it up and put the appropriate facilities in there and call it a day if we can fund it.
So when would that project hope to go through?
The expanded project,
Yeah,
I gotta try. We're gonna try to write maybe some grants for that, or budget for it, but at least get probably a design moving forward so that we can see how much it's gonna cost, and then budget for it when we can.
what did the downtown multimodal study say about that stretch?
The multimodal study, really, I guess I can't remember. We talked about a crossing there to alleviate the disconnect between the downtown and the Great Northern because of
Yeah.
Avenue.
Yeah, and I guess that was what the reason for my question is what is there like some section of that connection getting from the Great Northern to Last Chance? I mean, is that a leg of it to go down Front Street? Like, do you
The Front
put
Street
in a
was
little leg of it?
Front Street was reconstructed about 6 years ago with the
It's got the sharrows that go there.
sharrows and the sidewalks on both sides.
So I just wonder if that's worth thinking about. Some, even if it's one block, little portion of the connection that eventually goes from, they call the Last Chance Trail, from the Walking Mall to the Great Northern.
I mean, we'll look into it, but that's just when we started looking at the 5 point and then trying to mitigate Neil a little bit. That bigger project kind of came to mind, and if we can find the funding for it, hopefully we can find a grant for it. But again, the only part that's budgeted right now is the 5 point intersection study.
And so then that 5 point part gonna go ahead and the expanded part is later, or?
Well, that's what we're gonna try to work through during budget discussions and see where the commission's strategic priorities came out after their meeting and see where that fits into the grand scheme of things.
So so the 5 Point intersection, you're talking about the mini malfunction downtown there, just for, so there's a study being conducted on that right now.
Yeah.
Is that study include any public meetings?
Yeah.
At all?
So after they get the topo, we'll go off public meetings.
Okay, that I didn't hear that. So, so there will be some concept plans for people to look at. Okay, and that so within probably 2 months or something.
Yeah, I don't remember the schedule right off the top of my head, but that sounds like it should do.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions on the 5 Point intersection? Seeing none, let's move on. RFB installation.
So we have a couple pairs of RFPs that we purchased to put around town, and one of them was slated for the Stewart Benton crossing there, but that one's looking like if we do it right now, then MDT kind of indicated that they're going to want a mast arm, at least RFB across the roadway because of the 2 lanes there. So now it's getting to a discussion of, bringing the concept up that was talked about in the LRTP and talked about in a couple other studies about a road diet on Benton there. Because if we were to do that, then we would be able to just install the RFBs. But obviously that's a little bit farther down the road project. So maybe trying to find an interim situation or interim fix that we can do. It might even be, doing a project that contemplates the road diet and see how it works. That's about where we are. We have a lot of crossings that we get complaints about across the city. Bellevue and Saddle is one that I can think of. That would probably be a good candidate for an RFB. That one we just have to get another head basically and put on the south end for basically advanced warning, because that corner coming down Saddles, it's not a blind corner, but it's not. It would be nice to have the advanced warning for hopefully people would slow down. Saddle would probably be another one. So when we stuck the RFB out at Country Club, we had a speed sign out there previously that collected data, and the speed sign really didn't have a whole lot of impact on traffic compliance with the speed limit. But once we put the RFB out there, we didn't have the ability to monitor speeds, but in monitoring compliance for stopping for pedestrians crossing the roadway, the compliance rate was fairly high. And we've seen that across the city that, I don't have the exact numbers, but it's upwards of 80% better of compliance. We still have people that ignore everything that gets put out there, but so I think that they're effective and a good tool to put out. So you'll be seeing more and more of those as we identify those areas and get them installed.
So we have 2 to be installed, but we don't know where they're going to be installed yet.
Right now, I think the front runner was Stewart and Benton until we work out that issue, but probably Bellevue and Saddle would probably be our next step to get it put up. And then that would have to wait till the spring so we can get the foundations in and fix any of the ramp issues. I don't remember if there's any ramp issues over there, but we'd obviously bring everything up to ADA if there was anything.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's been on our list, so I definitely would support that one. I'd love to get the other one installed someplace as well too, as long as it doesn't do any good in the shop.
Well, if you have ideas, you can shoot them our way, and then we can see what compare them with our counts and then accident history and this, that, and the other thing that we can compare it and see where we can place the next one. So
yeah, I mean, the other thought, from our walk audit on 11th is at Warren and 11th, there's a flasher there
that one's being replaced.
Okay.
I am replacing all flashing yellow lights in the city of Howland because I don't think they work. It flashes all the time. People ignore them.
That's exactly what we talked about.
Pedestrian actuated ones, it's not flashing until somebody pushes the button and wants to cross, and then it's more of a, I think we get a lot more compliance with just the randomness of the.
Yeah, it's great. That was my impression from that walk. I was like, this isn't doing.
I know there's a flasher on California by Smith School that seems to be ignored by motorists. So
that one will kind of depend on what the school district decides to do with other schools. I think Smith was one of the ones on the list.
No, Smith is not one on the list.
Hawthorne was.
Hawthorne, yeah.
Which I'm not sure. I don't know the conditions of the school, but
yeah.
Interesting.
No, the other one is on 11th, and Hoback. Hoback is a route for Howland middle schoolers. So that would be a good installation. That's why we've talked about bulb outs on 6, because that Hoback is a straight stretch right down to Howland Middle School.
Yep.
So that flasher will get redone this spring, summer.
Oh, good.
And then the brand new crossing. So, yeah,
very good.
Okay.
So as far as the policy, that's more the sidewalk summit. Kind of once we get some guidance from the commission, we'll move forward with any policy changes there. MDT project, Lola Shepherd, I did have a meeting with them. Not sure how productive it was, but did reiterate that we want the connections, and they reiterated that they can't build sidewalks because of the funds that it's coming from. So my next step was, well, at least account for the sidewalks, because they weren't accounting for them. They were stormwater ponds. And I'm like, if the city has to go in and put sidewalks in, then we have to redo the stormwater calcs, because now we're taking up capacity of the stormwater pond. So at the very least, build it out to subgrade, so that if we can get a project in there, at least it's basically prepped and ready to go, and we don't have to redo any calcs. And we don't have to do a huge project just to get sidewalks in where it should have been. Being a proactive, this is our proactive stance, not a reactive. So yeah, we still have the maintenance agreement that the city needs to sign to. So we haven't signed that yet. So, but yeah.
Seems like MDT should be serving all transportation users rather than not put sidewalk in.
Well, they are putting sidewalk in though. That's my whole argument is at the signal they're bringing sidewalk around the curve to a point. At the roundabout they're bringing sidewalk out from all the legs to a point, but they're leaving the connection out. And I understand it's more money, but I mean, again, if you're going to do a project, then at least do it right, or at least plan for it so that we don't have to redo a whole bunch of stuff to put in sidewalks at a later date.
Do they have any update on when they're gonna? I keep sending up my comments, but
so they're still working with the adjacent landowners. Was my, because what I think it was early December, one of the the chiropractor came to the city asking for the strip of open land there that's just a rock strip, so that he could connect his two properties, so he could build an additional parking lot that's getting taken away by the roundabout. And so I had a further conversation with him, got a little bit more details that I hadn't had before, and so I kind of told him that we need to make sure that the property owners are whole, or at least there's an agreed upon trade or whatever, before we move any further than where we are, because we need to get that taken care of, and then we can talk about. Because I mean, one of the solutions that I thought of is you can just move the entire roundabout like 10 feet north into the, closer to Highway 12. That's not optimal, but it lessens the impact on those adjacent property owners as well. But they're working through that, and they're reaching out to the landowners. So I don't know what the status is of that.
So we could be in the LRTP update.
It could
before
still,
they actually build this.
Yeah. Probably. Mostly.
So that's where we could ask for sidewalks and get in a commission approved document asking for sidewalks.
Right.
So. Okay. Anything else, David, or any other questions for David? Okay. Said Sarah's not here. HPD gave us their update, so we'll move on. Budget recommendations. So I sent out the letter that we sent last year on budget recommendations, and then also I had some comments on the fiscal year 24 budget itself. So, and then I listed some other items that we had talked about. So, what do we want to ask for with the commission? I got removal, cancellation of projects. You guys know how I feel about the Benton Avenue project. And then we've also recommended to shorten the crossing distances on crews. That's part of the multimodal and the LRTP. I still think I would reiterate again that we, I think those are those cruise crossings are budget worthy projects. And any other, well, I'd like to hear your guys' comments also.
In terms of just things that we think should be budget priorities, or?
Yes.
I like the idea of trying to do something to push the trail to Montana, if that makes sense, from where it terminates on National Avenue over to the hope for place where it crosses Montana. And I guess I wonder if we should advocate for advancing the trail, even if it's one block at a time. Expand the trail a little bit further, eventually you'll get it done.
You're talking Centennial Trail?
Yeah.
Are you talking the crossing or what?
Well, the trail just at National Avenue, it just kind of comes to a dead end. I don't recall. I don't think there's even a sidewalk or anything.
There's a sidewalk that goes south along the U-Haul property, but there's nothing that goes north to
Sort of
Argyle.
Yeah, sort of. And so, yeah. Yeah, no, I would I would disagree. There's like a loading dock.
Yeah, there's the loading dock for
so I guess I don't know, maybe I don't have like a great vision of what that would be, but I think that, you know, maybe you budget for just a plan. What do we do here? You know, how do you get the trail to the next destination instead of just leaving it stuffed out there?
Yeah, I mean, so that's where we did the walk audit. You know, I'd like to see bulb outs, sidewalk extensions on National. And then we talked about putting a shared, even just striping, a shared use path, on the east side of National and then the south side of Argyle that would connect up to the.
Yeah, and I guess my thinking there was a part, seems that we're, the other, we're stalled out on, you know, because of BNSF on other stuff that we'd hope to do on the trail. Maybe we can do something on the other end of it and at least keep it growing. I don't know.
So the original plan was the trail would go south to Lindale and then cross at Major Malfunction Junction. But I think as the piece that got built, and then as the issues at Malfunction Junction got, you know, Malfunction Junction, that's where it was determined that we were going to go north. So one of the things that, like you said, you know, have a plan. That existing Centennial Trail master plan, I think, was done in 2009. So it's very outdated. We contemplated that piece that fell within the 5-point intersection studies to make that connection from National there, the Indian and National, across there. But I think there's portions of that plan that could be updated, and that would benefit, I guess, showing the vision for that backbone network. I mean, it's a little bit, plan needs to be updated, but there's bits and pieces that need to be, like this piece. What's an interim fix? What's a long-term fix?
So David, you're saying the 2009 plan had the idea to go north, the 2009 plan was going towards Malfunction Junction.
Towards Malfunction Junction.
Okay.
And then the trail itself was, I can't remember if it was just sidewalks along Boulder, or if they had but their plan was to go along Boulder there, and this is where we contemplated with the 5-point to go south or north, and then incorporate more of the 6th Ward features that weren't there back in 2009, like the 6th Ward garden and now the renovated Industries, and then the railroad district there. So I think there's been a lot of changes since 2009 that might affect the path. So just food for thought.
Yeah, I just don't like doing all these plans, because we already have the neighborhood plan that's actually being produced already for the 6th Ward. I did check with Michael Alvarez. I didn't hear back from him, but you know, that could be a part of the neighborhood plan there also. And then,
does that mention a connection point for the trail at all, or no?
it should.
The piece that I've already read talks a lot about the at-grade crossing, and whether it's a tunnel or a overpass, and then a road diet between the railroad tracks and Malfunction Junction.
Yeah, we had the public meetings, it's almost over a year ago, and haven't seen anything yet. So I don't know. But it was part of the LRTP, it was part of the 5-point intersection study. It should be part of the neighborhood plan, and it should be part of the LRTP update. So I don't know. My opinion is I don't think we need another specific update, another plan.
When you're saying tunnel or overpass, you know, over Montana, is that where we go?
The road to go over under the railroad tracks.
Oh, going north, south.
Yeah.
Okay, and then back over. I see.
So, I mean, we have the crossing at Bozeman is budgeted, you know, that's just in process. Okay, it is. Yeah.
We budgeted for that one because it was indicated to us that the Lindale one we should reapply for because that one just missed the getting a TA grant. And then this time around, the Bozeman crossing scored better than the Lindale, so but we already had money budgeted for the Bozeman crossing.
Well, so I guess, you know, maybe maybe this isn't maybe this is just more on my mind since it's the last one we did, that maybe we just, you know, make a recommendation that the city put a bulb out and a crossing on National and then stripe the road over to the crossing. And I agree with that. I don't know if it's best to do that in the LRTP. Because and the reason I say that is, you know, we got a year's worth of recommendations of the commission, and well, yeah, I guess I just yes, and I guess that's where we're hopefully what we're discussing is, I guess, what are maybe we just stick with what we've already talked about, those recommendations, and say which ones are the priority. And the thinking would be that's something that could go in this year's budget and actually be done. Yeah, not something that's long range that, you know, we could think about doing at some future year. And I fully agree that if we're pursuing the Bozeman Avenue crossing, because when's that crossing going to be done? This summer?
The design should be getting something out to the public this winter. The design should get done before spring, and then we can put it out for bid.
I mean, I fully support the Bozeman Avenue crossing, but there's no place to get to it. So I do think I fully support making the connection on National and Argyle to the Bozeman crossing, just so there's a link on one side. Yeah. And then we can worry about the connection east on Boulder Avenue, you know, through the 6th Ward area. Right.
So, well, I don't want to jump off the east side of Centennial if we're not done. So, but I'm going to your broader question. I mean, I read I refreshed myself on our priorities from 10 months or 8 months ago. I mean, a lot of those were Centennial Trail focused. And I don't know, maybe I missed it at last meetings, but do we have an update on the west side, what's going on with BNSF and all that? Was there anything new there that I didn't?
They sent an email, and I sent an email back responding to their question, and we're playing the back and forth game.
Okay. So then the question is, outside the Centennial Trail, Cruz Avenue context, because those were priorities that are listed in their top 10. Those took up a good chunk. And then it was safe routes to school. Reiterating those without, my
thought here is I'd like to ask the commission to budget for reducing the crossing distance on Cruz Avenue.
Yeah,
I think
that makes sense to me.
It's in the LRTP. It's been our past recommendation. It's in the multimodal downtown multimodal plan.
Yep.
And it was a relic of urban renewal, which we all understand that was a mistake now. So let's correct it. So I support that. I don't. I like this connection. Because I do think you know, we shouldn't have this crossing at Bozeman with no way to get to it, you know, and I don't know what the best method. Should we ask the commission for that? I think we should also, we could ask the commission to budget for the Lindell Avenue crossing. Because we only have the one budgeted for Bozeman, is that correct? No.
What would a crossing at, I'm just picturing malfunction junk, what would a crossing there look like that year?
Where?
What's up?
Where, Lindell?
Yeah,
At
Lindell.
Lindell.
Yeah.
So it'd be the same thing, you know, there was a schematic in the multimodal
Okay.
or the 5-point intersection
Yes.
plan itself. So
Just that.
yeah. And that's also when we look at the CAP, I'd like to see Rodney Street Phase 3 in there because that would be the connection from Helena Avenue
Right.
up to Lindell.
I mean, those all make sense to me. I mean, that's
So
I reread the memo. I was like, you know, the reality is that was, like I said, 8 months ago. How many of those things have we pushed forward? There's still priorities.
yes.
That's the reality. Still the highest to me. So
A couple of things on the list did get done.
Yeah, actually the paving of Centennial Trail.
we have the pavings done. That's true.
And we have money budgeted for paving, you know, west of Benton Avenue. We just need the easement for it. So,
Okay, so that's budgeted. Yeah. Okay. Good. Trying to think of other things that I had. That's what I reread that. I was like, this is still a good list.
yeah.
So assuming that we're all kind of on that page, then how do we present that to the commission? What do we actually do to like bring that to them and explain to them why those are things that are worthy of being put into the budget?
I think the best way to do that is just by action minutes that we vote on.
I can't remember, but I think they're planning on setting aside time for each board to present.
So we may get 5 minutes, 10 minutes or something to.
I don't have to double check with the name, but I think that there was talk about giving time for each board to present their recommendations.
So
When would that be, David? Sorry, just
We don't have the schedule for the
yeah, so because we're, you know, by the time, when's the preliminary budget schedule? That's like June sometime. You know, I'd like to have action minutes at this month's meeting that we vote on. So the commission has this well in advance, because they'll be starting budget talks here in the next month or two. And so at least that's,
100%.
you know, we're way ahead of it, you know, and then we can reiterate our priorities at a, you know, admin meeting.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I don't disagree. But I wonder if we can make almost some kind of presentation on, you know, here's a crude happening, and this is how far it is, and here's why, you know, this is dangerous and has a lot of comments.
And I mean, the
Public.
foundational document, I mean, to me, the foundational document we have now that we, the public and this body have now that we didn't have this time last year in such a format is the multimodal plan. And so to me, that's
And does that talk about these crossings?
Talks about
the cross.
yeah, it talks about them.
And
And it
so,
highlights, for example, I think cruise has a projected cost associated with it as well. So I mean,
so yeah, and that's really good. Then I think you know, you can just kind of bring that in.
To clarify, is that all the crossings of Cruise? Or is that Sixth and Cruise?
our recommendations were Broadway, 6th, and Lawrence. So, and I know the multimodal was only Broadway and 6th, but
Broadway 6, and I was just bringing it up. I've noted one more. Cutler.
Hopefully, you know, in the future that entire section of Cruise goes away.
Yeah.
That's why I'm leaving it off.
Okay, yeah.
It's a great cutoff on a mountain bike, but it probably doesn't, the street doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Broadway and 6. And then Lawrence. Yep.
James, do you have any comments on budget items at all?
No, I guess, it's always the same, connecting the Centennial Trail like we all want. And, Cruise is a good plan. And we always desperately need those sidewalks.
Yeah. Well, and I think just we can get something on paper.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we advise the commission to budget in fiscal year 25 shortening of the crossing distances on Cruise Avenue at Broadway, 6th, and Lawrence.
And I'll second that motion.
617.
But I want to discuss it a little
You
bit
bet.
more, I guess, in terms of what does that mean, by putting bulb outs and ADA ramps and some sort of protected crossing, not flashers, but just
That's what I was,
landscaping.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe a question for you, Greg.
I think my thought is, we ask for the project, it gets budgeted. What that actually means, that's something that we and transportation department figure out. But there were some budget, I think yes, it does include sidewalk extensions. I'm going to try and change my terminology. Because it's a sidewalk extension, not a curb extension. That makes more sense. So it's all of the above. So it could, maybe it's a mini roundabout. Just part of it is to figure out what that actually is.
Yeah, and in the multimodal plan, this is my non-engineering showing here. I have that background. A slip lane. It mentions removing slip lanes.
Yes.
Those are just those.
Is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, and that were, obviously it would be complete street compliant, and it, so it means a lot of things, but,
So I guess I seconded the motion, but what does it mean to budget for it? Does it just mean figure out what it's going to cost, or does it mean we kind of, both figure out what it's going to cost and that put
And
that
figure
money
out-
aside to actually pay for it?
exactly.
Because then I guess I kind of wish I had at least a vague idea of what it would cost. I mean, in terms of getting rid of those slip lanes, I think if you're doing crossings at 6, you should get rid of that awful slip lane there.
In the multimodal plan, I think it had line items.
It did have a
budget projected costs.
exactly. That's the benefit of it. And so the way I see this,
In the multimodal plan?
Or sorry, not.
yeah, the multimodal
Oh,
plan.
you scared me. You scared me. I was gonna say.
So we give our overarching vision to the commission, and then if the commission decides to hear,
Yeah.
they like what we say, then it gets, Dave gets the assignment to start putting together some budgetary numbers.
Yep, and I like the motion and the idea. My only thought is on this same theme. I don't mean to bring a broken record, but do we want to formally tie it to the multimodal plan to say, hey, commission, this was reflected in this study?
So I think maybe if we have maybe just make your motion, but then if we have an opportunity to present, you kind of make your case. Look, at 6, this is a safe route to school. And then, at the other end, this is really the vitality of your downtown. And, you know, there's a lot of people trying to navigate these crossings, and, you know, you're trying to revitalize stuff, you know, brand new,
Yeah,
you know, millions of dollars into that building there. And it's you know, it expands your downtown.
Yeah.
And makes it a more walkable place. And so and then, you know, you bring up the plan to make the case for why you need Lawrence too.
Yeah. And I'm gonna trust the commission that they know that we have a basis of our recommendations. You know, the multimodal plan was just adopted, what, November?
Yeah, it's fresh. That's why I
Yes,
bring it up.
exactly.
Well, yeah, and I'm in agreement too, in that, you know, and part of what we want to do is say, you know, hey, here's this plan. From this plan, let's do this. Let's do some part, you know, this is what we think you should do out of it. And, you know, the rest maybe someday, but.
And I'm
always do this.
certainly not opposed to amending the motion to include as recommended by the multimodal plan.
That's what I'd like to see. That's a
And-
suggestion.
And our recommendations from last year. Okay. Okay.
Accept it as a friendly amendment.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so we got a motion by Greg to budget for the shortening of Cruise Avenue crossings on at Broadway 6 and Lawrence according to the downtown multimodal plan and our recommendations for fiscal year 24.
Yeah, second.
Seconded by Lucas. Okay. Any other further comments, questions?
So, yeah, I do. Sorry.
Okay, no,
So, what is the plan? Are we gonna submit like 3 things, or like? Because I think this is one, and a good one that we should do, but I also don't think we should do too many.
Yeah, and it seems like the conversation on even James, like what James is saying, thematically, we're building off of that representation of the recommendations we made last April. And so I'm still keying off that document to see how many things we can build in that would be reasonable, that wouldn't shock the commission, that has grounding in the multimodal plan. Just, you know,
yeah.
my theme.
So, and I am in favor of like, and I think maybe we kind of do it in this way. Well, for the multimodal plan, do this. From safe routes to schools,
Exactly.
do this. From trails, do this. Because the problem with the plan is it's limited in what it's looking at, and you know, the rest of town, it, in some ways, is more underserved than the downtown.
Yeah, that's why I like the document put together in April, because it had all 3 of those factors.
Yeah, so and that's why I brought this one up, is because it was our past recommendation. It was also included in the multimodal. So you know, I'd like to see it budget, you know, fiscal year 25 doesn't mean it's not gonna get built next year, right? But we can at least budget for it. I do have some thoughts on ultimate CIP type stuff too, that we can look for long-term. So you guys don't mind, I'd like to just close this motion. So and we'll do it as that. So so you got a motion on the table to shorten the crossing distances on Cruise, Broadway 6 and Lawrence according to the downtown multimodal plan and our recommendations from last year. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, and then moving on, yeah, we don't want to, I think we want to be strategic and not have too many you know, items. So my thought, you know, is and maybe we put things on the recommendations, not put them in the budget for FY25, as we included in the CIP. So right now, David, am I correct? The only thing that's in the CIP I see is the mini malfunction roundabout engineering design. That's actually budgeted fiscal year 28. So that's the only thing we're pursuing in the CIP right now, then?
Because we're focusing on maintenance.
Yeah. And, like I would like to see Rodney Street phase 3 in the CIP, and also maybe even the Lindell Avenue crossing in the CIP. So it doesn't have to be a fiscal year 20, budget item, but we at least lay the groundwork for future discussions.
Do we want to separate that as, well, I guess, just planning for the next few meetings, we want to separate that out of our FY25 set and make that a separate set of recommendations to the commission, or you want to include that?
I'd like to include it because the CIP is included in the budget.
That's fair.
So I think it's pertinent to do it now.
Okay.
And then my thoughts on safe routes to schools is we could ask for the city to budget, say, another $200,000 to safe routes to schools. What does that mean? Well, it could be, an RFB somewhere. I think, there is that $200,000, that could be used for the sidewalk extensions on 6th, with the overlay project.
So there is no safe routes to school plan.
I understand, but there's a budget. And that, I remember Commissioner Halliday putting that together, that there was a budget item there for $200,000 to be used at the discretion of the commission. So there's no plan, but there's money to be used there where.
So we're coordinating with the school district to get a new plan, because the old one had quite a few safe routes to school. More than, some respects it looked like they put down every route that somebody said that they ever took to a school. So, my vision of a safe route to school is you create that backbone like a transportation system, so that you can feed people into those routes, and 4 cardinal points, and have one from each direction, and then funnel those students to those places that you want to go, and you work your way out from that kind of that network.
When that plan, that was produced by the school district?
I don't remember who produced it. It was produced way back in the 2000s or late 90s.
Wow.
It's a pretty dated.
Yeah, and I even thought like we did the walk audit at Broadwater School that, at least putting ADA ramps on the corners could have been the safe routes to schools, but as we have this overarching sidewalk discussion, some of this stuff is going to get lumped into the sidewalk project, but I listed some of these intersections that I've had conversation with parents that are strategic intersections for safe routes to schools. And they're the ones that I'm aware of. But I almost envision like a safe routes to schools to be part of the LRTP update, so we can strategically and have a document that says these are the intersections that we need to be
and I guess
improved.
And sorry to interrupt. I'm in favor of that idea, and I also agree with Dave, and just the big picture of how it should be approached. But I kind of wonder more about just like low-hanging fruit, and in some ways that was like Henderson, in terms of, hey, you don't need to analyze anything. There's no sidewalk across the street from the school, like finish it. Davis Street was one that I had, picked up on, and there's no sidewalk across the street from the middle school. And it's one of those ones where it's just like a key missing piece, because like their whole rest of the street had a sidewalk until you get to like half a block away.
And you know, my thought is,
So I wonder if maybe just, you know, like some of that stuff I feel like is just, it's kind of on rails. Like we don't need to weigh in on the long term. Yeah, we should plan for it. Yes, we should do it. I think the commission supports that. But you know, what could you do this summer? Like, what could we do right now?
Well, it's just a
That's easy, low hanging fruit that you could just see do something.
We had a question for David on that, or on the mechanics here. So the $200,000, is that allocated every year, or is it a line item that is generic that may or may not be spent?
it was a budget item that was added strictly as a commission priority for the 1 year.
For the 1 year?
Yep.
Okay, so not a recurring.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there.
It goes all the way up to the other end of the street for sidewalk.
Yeah.
So that $200,000, do we know right now, was that all allocated? Is it still?
No, David, do you know how much what is left in that at all?
I'd have to double check.
Do you know what it was spent on at all?
Probably the rectangle rapid flash beacons. There wasn't like a project ever dedicated or talked about, but I can go back and look at those.
Yeah, and you know, it's one reason I want to get, you know, the walk out behind Helena Middle School, and you know, we don't need a plan. You know, just talking with the principal and other parents. Billings Avenue.
So there's your gaps around the middle school. Everything in red.
For sidewalk? Wow.
Yeah, and you know that's
just the sidewalks. That's not showing the ADA ramps.
Yeah, and I wasn't aware of this until I started hearing parents drop-offs and speaking with Principal Boyle. Is that Davis on the northeast side? You know, that's the back entry of Helena Middle School.
Yeah,
that's where the buses would stop, and there's a lot of kids that cross right there, which I never would have thought of, but said a lot of people cross right there, and actually parents will pick up, so they walk that 1 block on Davis right there. So you know, there's recognition that there needs to be some type of intersection treatment at Davis on the backside of Helena Middle School, and then also Billings Avenue. That's where, you know, the crosswalk, like by Vigilante Stadium, because there's a lot of kids that walk from Stewart Homes over to HMS.
yeah.
So those are ones that, I mean, we can do a safe routes to school plan. It's like, how are those not going to be in there? You know, so those are, you know, some intersections we could ask for a safe routes to school.
So just spinning this forward, David, like for example, with the map you have there, we have a dedicated fund that there's still some money in. We have this map or this program, you can see where the gaps are. Is the idea to say, okay, let's target that money for these projects at those intersections, or is it more, am I oversimplifying that?
So we can do that through this program for pretty much any intersection, corridor, or whatever. The beauty of the software that we got is once they convert these red lines to assets that are missing, then we can do, so right now I can go into the compliance overview map and I can select a roadway, or I can do a radius, or I can draw it hand drawn and create a plan, and it will bring in the costs, and it'll give us an estimated cost and everything that needs to be done within whatever area that you choose. So Billings, for example, we could say from Billings to across to Montana, get all the non-compliant stuff and all the gaps, and come up with a project. And just hypothetically, it's $250,000. Then we could say, okay, that's $250,000 to bring it into compliance and fix the gaps, commission, what would you like to do? And then that would be their decision to, you know, it might come in at 198, you know, or it might come in at 400,000, I don't know. But so it's one of those things that this tool, now we have something, and those costs can be updated every year so that we would have actual costs coming in behind those. So that if the commission, you know, if MTAC, you know, throws out an intersection out of the blue and the commission says, what does that look like? I mean, realistically, in an admin meeting, I can bring up our website, I can put a circle around the intersection, I can say, well, right now we have this much non-compliance and this much gaps, and it looks like the cost is this. It's just that fast.
Yeah, I guess my mind, trying to grapple with is doing discrete recommendations at this intersection with this money, or you know, making a broad statement to use the remainder of that money in the next fiscal year is already sitting there for projects as identified by the city. Something more generic in policy, but there's already dedicated money for that, so it's not an ask. I guess
So the byproduct of the sidewalk summit is they asked us to look at each school within 1,000 feet, basically. That's just a round number for them to see, and what is non-compliant and what is gaps.
Okay.
And then, you know, rank them by cost, rank them by number of non-compliance, rank them by gaps, you know, rank them by number of kids that go to the school, because obviously high school is going to be probably less walking than the middle school or grade schoolers. So, you know, how do we prioritize that? And that would be a discussion with the commission. You know, do you rate high schools a little bit lower on the walking scale because they might go grab their car, and rank a middle school or a, you know, it's those kind of questions that we can, I guess, move those priorities around and then come up with.
So getting to Lucas's
Well,
example, that
and I guess my thinking is that we can help identify where a few dollars would go a long way. And I think, you know, Billings Avenue, zoom over to Davis. It's 20 feet of sidewalk there on that corner of Davis would, you know, go a long darn way, and you know, same as 20 feet of sidewalk on Broadway by the Capitol, you know, and that's always something we've kind of done is tax. Well, you know, here's like just one piece that, you know, is kind of missing.
For missing sidewalk, the commission has the, you know, authority to order in missing sidewalk. That's in the city code.
Well, or you could use Safe Route to Schools money and just build that.
And that's okay. It's like I just don't know. I'm struggling with how to frame that recommendation this year. In this cycle.
I think we should just, I would be comfortable just asking the city to budget another $200,000 for the Safe Road to School fund.
That sounds, there we go. Yeah, I like that. Because I mean, it's dedicated, it's right there, it's set, you know, and then David
and then we can figure out how to extract the money out of there. So I'll just go ahead and make the motion 639. You know, motion by Greg to budget $200,000 for the Safe Routes to School fund. To the Safe Routes to School fund.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other further questions, comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, all in favor. Okay, what do you guys feel about, you know, making a motion to cancel the Benton Avenue project? That was one of our recommendations last year, or
Well, I guess my feeling is I think we made our feelings known on it. And so I don't know that the value of continuing to kind of,
And that got to the commission, I believe. They saw that.
well, it was part of that whole, that
Yeah.
document that we're looking at, where
Right.
we made all those recommendations.
Yeah. So again, I trust the commission knows how we feel about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we need to formalize it
I just,
anymore.
you know, yeah, in terms of priorities, to me, it's not in the top 3 priorities, so.
I would agree with that. I mean, I feel like we've made that clear.
Yeah, we'll trust the commission if they agree with us that the Cruz Avenue crossings are a higher priority of the city. They can cancel that Avenue project on their own.
Yeah.
So, okay. What about like the CIP? CIP is to, not for fiscal year 25, but at least get long range plans, 5-year plan out of, I'd like to see Rodney Street phase 3 in the CIP. When we started Rodney Street, phase 1, phase 2, and there was a phase 3. I trusted that phase 3 was going to get built, because if it wasn't, I was going to ask for some things in Rodney Street phase 1 to be built, and in Rodney Street phase 2. So
phase 3 was only contemplated to be non-motorized. They weren't full reconstructions because of the cost.
To be overlays, they said.
Yeah. Do the water and sewer mains need to be replaced in Rodney Street phase 3?
I don't believe so.
I mean, because that was part of the reason why the other part of Rodney Street was done, is to fix. And that's where, part of my issue with like Benton Avenue is, we should be looking at funding stacks to do a project. And there's, Rodney Street, there's a lot of value in replacing the pipes underneath the street and then putting the lipstick on the surface.
So I guess, not to disagree with, I'm not sure what that phase 3 entails, so I guess I'm not or what's it have to do with non-motorized as opposed to just the street itself?
Phase 3, part of it would have been going from Helena Middle School north to Euclid Avenue, or Lindell Avenue, so that's where the crossing would go. So it would create you can see there's no sidewalk along Rodney Street north of Helena Avenue. I'd also like to see curb extensions on Helena Avenue.
And then when we're talking about the crossing on Lindell, is that where it would be?
Yes, that's what was recommended. Yeah.
Not over at National.
So Helena Avenue and Rodney, we're going to be looking at traffic signal warrants there.
Okay.
And that's another one in our future CIPs to convert that signal to a roundabout to slow that traffic down at the school there. Because there's a lot of, the only time that the cross traffic of Helena Avenue really gets congested is during school time. During the day, there's not a lot of cross traffic, so the roundabout might work better there than a traditional signal.
So going back, well, I'm delighted to hear you say that. But so is that budgeted, or is that?
We're going to be budgeting some money to look at all our signals in Helena, because I feel there's more than 1 or 2 or 3 that don't meet the traffic warrants anymore. And personally, I think roundabouts are a safer treatment for all modes of transportation, not just the vehicles, but I think all modes. And if we have the real estate within our right of way to do roundabouts, then it's one of my recommendations and goals to get those converted over to roundabouts and make it safer for everyone. And plus get better traffic flow out of roundabouts than you do with the signal, especially for those that are not really warranted anymore. It almost causes more frustration for people using those crossings because they're sitting for nothing. So
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Okay. We could,
So Rodney Street Phase 3 was the from Helena Ave
it
to,
was from Helena Avenue, and then it also was south from Broadway. Broadway to,
it goes up several blocks, but that again was just going to be a overlay.
okay,
When we talked about the capital improvement plan for the trail, going to go back to what we were talking about, the national trail end of National Avenue. Do we want to talk about, make some kind of recommendation about the bridge that, you know, it's always been sort of thought about,
Yeah.
on the other end of it, you're saying? Is that on hold because of the BNSF as well? Is there two things that are on hold?
so there's money budgeted for the study, feasibility study for the bridge over Henderson.
that's what I thought. There's some momentum there, yeah.
And that's,
You'd have to realign the trail to do that.
likely, and that would be part of the feasibility study, but the feasibility study is not going to be pursued until the easement is secured.
Right.
That's
That
past discussions we've had.
the dang easement.
Yep, the chicken or the egg.
So
thing.
I guess I'm confused just because I thought the easement was over by the transfer station. It's the whole deal.
The easement starts at Benton and goes all the way over all to almost Jocelyn.
So it's west of Benton Avenue is the easement.
So
Almost over to Jocelyn. That you said? Wow.
does it have to be moved over by Henderson? That's what I'm understanding.
We don't have the easement there so the current easement that we have for the city is the trail can exist where it's at right now, but no improvements can be made.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And so we've been holding on to the old easement because it's too close to the tracks for what the railroad likes. And so, yeah, so to Barney Park, a little bit after Barney Park, the Barney Park to basically Benton, the trail gets realigned closer to the southern property line of the BNSF. Once you get to Barney Park and along the Salvation Army there, it stays pretty much in where it's at because it's pushed as far south as it can get. And then when it comes out towards the bridge, it kind of comes out, but yeah, the trail would be realigned to meet any bridge ramps or whatever treatments that are there. And then on the west side of Henderson, it pretty much follows where it is currently until it ties into where the paving stops there. Just so there's those storage sheds there on Joslyn. Basically everything adjacent to those storage sheds got paved and then the rest of it didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, so just going through our list from last year, safe routes to schools, we had Broadwater Elementary, but that is going to be part of the sidewalk discussion. 9th Street, sidewalk discussion again, allocation to safe routes to schools fund. We have that again. Installation of bulb outs at Jefferson on Broadway. I think that definitely has some validity, but that could be part of the safe routes to schools. Or I got my own ideas that this is part of the LRTP update, and we look at these strategic intersections, and I think that's a better way to do it than kind of a piecemeal.
Yeah, sure.
Centennial Trail, paving around the transfer station, that's done. The Henderson Bridge, that's in process. Finalize the easement, that's in process. Pave the trail from Benton Avenue to Joslyn Street. There's money there to do that. You just need the easement. So
Well, it's not just paving. The railroad's requiring fencing along there, so
On the
that,
yeah,
so that 100 and whatever thousand left over is not gonna go very far with the fencing that's required. It's a 6-foot fence. It's not a security fence, you know, thank goodness, but it's it's still a chain link fence, providing a barrier from people crossing the tracks.
yeah.
So, I mean, maybe we can ask for that in the future, that we budget for a fence for the trail project. But, you know, I think, you know, we just need the easement first, and then we can talk more specifics. And then we had general improvements, you know, Benton Avenue crossings at Hauser and Stewart. We talked about that, you know, I think that's a better LRTP project, and then reallocating funds from the Benton Avenue to the Cruise Avenue. So we got everything addressed there.
Good.
You know, so I think we're consistent with what we asked for last year. If you guys are up for it, I'd like to ask that we include the Lindale Avenue crossing from the 5-point intersection study in the CIP.
That makes sense.
You know, just, you know, I fully agree. Let's get Bozeman built first. But let's, you know, keep our, you know, eye on the next prize, and let's try and get the Lindale one budgeted too.
So just while you guys are talking, sorry to plug in, but
The software.
so Billings between here and here, there's like 78 assets. That's roughly about, this doesn't include gaps. This is just the stuff that needs to be fixed. About $204,000. That's the estimate is right now. So
Your $200,000 doesn't go far when you're
200,000, as Greg knows, doesn't go very far when you're putting down concrete. Unfortunately,
Well, any infrastructure, asphalt, concrete, there's been an extreme escalation in prices in the last 10 years.
so can you see what you're doing there when you're redoing all the curves and
yeah. So
both sides of the street, and
there's sidewalk, crosswalks, curb ramps. There's all those individuals. And you can just click on one and it tells you what and then the cool thing about this is you, right there, you add these assets to a plan and you create a plan, say Billings sidewalks and ADA ramps. And so there was some that I wanted Darren to go out and field verify some stuff. I clicked on all the ones I wanted, I added it to a plan. He gets it on his tablet as a plan, and he can go out and field verify all those and enter any information he wants.
well, so I mean, that's part of the question, because it seems like I have not walked down that street, but it seems like there's missing a bunch of sidewalk. It's probably fine, more or less. I mean, it's
so yeah. So on here, you'll see when you guys see this, there's a priority 1 through 5. 1 is most egregious, 5 is So there's things that we're going to work with the commission on how they want to prioritize that. So, you know, in my book, if the cross slope is 2.2 and it's supposed to be 2.1, that's not going to lose any sleep over that one, because that could be calibration of a level. That could be, and besides, you know, it's just
ADA compliance is
it's lesser than a 6-foot vertical displacement that's a barrier to somebody.
yeah.
I look at, you know, the tree root gaps that Joel Peden can't get across. We should be fixing those. Yeah. So what can you actually add? Because we talk about, you know, sidewalk extensions, bulb outs. Can a price be provided to the commission so they know, like on a standard intersection, what would it cost to put sidewalk extensions, bulb outs on all 4 legs?
So I know we can put a cost in there for bulb outs. And then we would, it would be more of adding an asset to the plan, say, you know, Billings, and added those assets in as part of the construction. And then it would give them an idea of what I mean, we can tell them approximately what the curb extension at like an intersection so that all legs have all outs. What that would cost versus just the ADA ramps, the difference in cost there, but we can add it into the plan as well.
That's what I think it'd be helpful, is that so the commission knows that, like, you know, we don't need all 3 intersections there to have bulb outs, but let's at least budget for one, you know. I mean, I'd like to have that armed with that information to give a recommendation to the commission that, yeah, let's, you know, we can close the sidewalk gaps, fix the, you know, the worst offenders on non-compliance, and then, you know, put a bulb out on the intersection.
So that's one of those tools that the commission can have at their fingertips. They could just say, Kanopke, go fix all the priority 1 issues.
Wait, could you
That's easy. I can just go here and do all priority 1s and
citywide, or is
we
that?
can do citywide. I can make districts. I mean, we have the HCC districts loaded in here, so we can analyze it per HCC district. We can analyze it per the railroad improvement district or the downtown. You know, we can chop the city up into however many pieces we want and do it. You know, here's our 15 districts that we've created, and we're going to go district by district.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty much, I don't want to say endless, but you know, there's a lot of power that we can do to create plans to move forward with those priority areas that the commission feels are, you know, what needs to be done first. And now we know where everything is.
yeah.
That's we know where all those vertical displacements over 2 inches or 3 inches that, you know, Joel can't maneuver around. We now can actually search for those and see where those are at, and those could be #1 priority to go fix.
You know where all the stop signs are,
Those aren't loaded in yet, but they will be.
you do that.
So this once the road data gets loaded in here, they'll also give us what the cross slopes of the crosswalk are, so whether they're compliant or not.
You may have said this, I mean, I probably missed it, but what priority 1 or that threshold, what separates priority 1?
There's a bunch of rules in there that they have set for that kind of a standard setting, but you can go in and tweak them to whatever, you know, if you think, we'll just say hypothetically that they cut off priority 1 3 inches and or the vertical displacement at 3 inches. Well, if we feel that that's not good enough and it's 2 inches, then we can go set that vertical displacement at 2 inches, and then it will recalibrate everything that has 2 inches, and I'll throw those in.
Or reverse it, 6 inches or whatever, so you can
Whatever,
really get your problem spots. Interesting. Thank you.
Going back to, you know, we're getting late here. I'd like to, you know, finish our budget recommendations. We've been talking about 7 o'clock now. I'll make a motion to include the Lindell Avenue crossing in the CIP for the fiscal year 25 budget.
I'll second that.
Second by Kevin. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Well, I think the hesitancy was the thought that somehow we could get federal money or something to do it.
Yeah, and my thought is, if we can, great, then we can take it out of the budget. But it's at least letting the commission know that we think it's, or at least we can, we leave the project in the budget, but we can shift the money.
Yeah.
I'd at least like to let the commission know that, yeah, we want Bozeman first, but we want Lindell Avenue to happen.
So
Down the road.
Down, you know, within a couple of years after.
So we made kind of 2 recommendations. This would be the 3rd.
Yep.
And then is that it, or do we got others that we think we should push for?
We've done no, 3, right? Yeah.
We got 3, you know, and 2 of them are actually budgeted things. This one, the CIP it'll be, you know, doesn't have to be in a fiscal year 25, but at least get it on the CIP. So
Obviously, one of them's pretty, as we said before, pretty broad with the safe routes to school. I mean, that's gonna
Yeah.
encompass a lot of,
I don't think you'll get much pushback on that.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, you're asking specifically for money.
Let's try and close this motion. So the motion is to include the Lindale Avenue crossing on the CIP for the fiscal year 25 budget. All in favor, say aye.
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 I,
Okay. You know, I don't know, you know, that's three things there. I wouldn't be opposed to adding, you know, like the connection on National and Argyle, but I don't know how to ask for it.
yeah,
And I don't even know if it's worth, if it might be worth actually pursuing that as a temporary traffic, temporary striping as well too. Because I like the idea of going on the south side of Argyle there, but I don't know how well that's going to be received by Lewis and Clark Brewery, because they would lose parking there. So it makes sense to me, but it may not make sense to other folks.
just pulling it up again right here.
Well, what they lose in drivers, they might gain in
Walking. Yeah, and you know, Max Pigman has always been a strong supporter of.
Well, that's why he had to build that parking lot over there to have the sidewalks, so he had no parking.
Yeah. And that's where, you know, it can be our recommendation. I think there's good merit to it, and it's been supported with other past documents, and that's why maybe.
But yeah, exactly. And that's what I was just gonna ask David, is like, is it, and I think you already said it, we already talked about it, but that's the sort of the preferred route to do that connection. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't really know what other
It's a
alternative there
It's
is.
a no-brainer. Just exactly how that occurs, though,
Yeah.
you know, how to get from the end of Centennial Trail over to Bozeman.
Well, the question is too, does it have to be a 10-foot wide shared use path?
Right.
Because the other part on the other side of Bozeman, you're gonna have the same issue on there, because those are all curbside sidewalks. And you're removing parking or something, so, you know, does that connection, you know, desirable connection is a 10-foot wide part, does it have to be, or is getting sidewalks in there so that there's a pedestrian facility, you know, accomplish those goals?
Yeah. And that's why I'm thinking, maybe we catalog this in our brains, but you know, it's an item on the LRTP update, just so they can be more community vetting of it, and the neighborhood plan as well too.
Well,
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Yeah.
and in terms of long-term stuff, what about just going back to, you know, some of those earlier discussions, Neil and Benton, something that we've, I think, for a long time kind of advocated for a road diet on Benton.
So if we get the roundabout approved, then it's slated for a single lane roundabout through Benton. So
Yeah.
the
And
road
I-
diet would have to be there.
And I see this, especially something on an NDT corridor. It's more powerful when that becomes in part of the LRTP update also.
Yeah.
And especially, I did hear back from MDT on the Montana Avenue safety pedestrian study that they're doing. He said they hope to have something within a month. You know, and that'll, you know, I'd kind of like to see what they recommend there.
Well,
I think that can definitely be down to 2 lanes, Montana. Maybe not at the intersection of 11th there, but you know, further up, all the way up to Broadway. You know, there's a lot of wasted space there.
And so our recommendation was roundabout at Broadway, road diet between Broadway and 6th, and then roundabout at 6th there, because there's more than enough.
Roundabout, sorry, at Broadway, Montana. So
Broadway and Montana, roundabout, and then get rid of the 4-way stop. And then down at 6th, do a roundabout. And then in between, you know, like Greg said, 2 lanes, and then whatever you do with the extra space, you know, whether it's green or
Green space.
or if it's pedestrian facility, whatever, but narrow that down, because I mean, anybody that works in transportation can see that that's not really a 4-lane facility anymore.
And I even like Benton,
Yeah.
you know, outside of a, peak 10 minutes, the intersection may need 4 lanes there, for storage distance, but the length of the road doesn't need 4 lanes on Benton Avenue. But, we can provide that recommendation, but I see it's futile to do that. It needs to be part of the LRTP update.
So, and I guess my question in a way is, if there's real estate there to do a road diet, it seems like there's room for a mixed use path on Neal and Benton and Helena Avenue. There's room for a path if you got rid of the absurdly wide road that's not needed. This obviously fell well out of the budget, but I feel like, just like planning for the sidewalks, you should build it in such a way where you don't have to undo it if you ever want to put one in.
Where are you talking, Helena or Benton?
Well, from
Like
all of the above, from Benton through Neal down Helena.
Right, and that's when I said and design in the appropriate facilities.
Yeah.
That's sidewalks, that's a path, that's
Well,
whatever that
and
is.
I guess that's where, maybe we have some input. To me, I would think it's a path, not sidewalks. And, and part of that is maintenance, right? Like, an at-grade path, you can just go and plow it all, and like, you can actually use it, whereas sidewalks, everyone's out there trying to shovel it, and it's, impassable whenever there's a storm.
That's why I asked, when that study would be available, because, typically, you come up like 3 concept plans that the public can vet. And so that's what I would envision is, we get at the roundabout, but there's variations on what that's going to look like. So the public can look at the options and decide we like option 2 and 3, or a combination of 1 and 3,
you kind of get 3 bad options, and then you feel like
then the recommendation could be option 4. It's something completely different as well too. And that's where we can talk all the, but let the process occur for public engagement. So once the survey is done and there's something on that mini malfunction junction, we can look at, are we fine with just sidewalks, or do we want to incorporate, a shared use path?
So Lucas, I am not going to just build something that I have to redo in 5 years.
Yeah.
I will set it up. I mean, there might be some transition to where it only goes to 1 lane because Neal's so wide. There might be a transition there and some tapers, but it's not going to be built so that we have to rebuild a section of it. We might have to take out the transition section, but that's going to be minimal. I don't like building stuff that has to be undone.
Well, and going back to what you were saying before, you at the core of your transportation system, you have a couple of paths that go across town in different ways. Like, where are those going to be? And then, those branch out into, more sidewalks or whatever to like get to your actual house. But, you get to your main path and you can take that path across town.
Right, and that's what Centennial Trail is, I guess, envisioned to be, is that main backbone across town, and unfortunately, we have some missing vertebrae.
Yeah,
BNSF.
Well, and I think we, yes, but you know, there should be another one equal to that on the other side of Lindell for the other, you know, east-west. And then, you know, some connections between them.
Yeah, we need a network, not one trail.
Yeah, and I see that as an LRT. Keep that in the back of your minds too. I see that as an LRTP. That there is I don't know what it is on the west side, like a Benton, but there is a bike route through town. I think whoever developed it probably doesn't ride their bike very well, but I know it's nice. You know, and it is signed as a bike route, and the old Prickly Pear Land Trust maps show it as a bike route, you know, through town.
Yeah, it comes there down Dearborn, turns here, and then goes down Minton, then comes down, I think, Lawrence. But you know, you could turn it here and say goes down Neal.
Yeah,
There's room for it there.
and you got to be up out of your saddle trying to climb up Lawrence on a bike.
Well, yeah, and you know, the issue of, and that really is the problem of, you know, trying to bike across the south part of town is you can't go very fast going up the hill, and a million cars are trying to take the same road and like swerve around you, and it's just super uncomfortable for, you know, anybody to try to do that, even if you're athletic.
When you said that, I have a question for MTech as a whole. So if we have a facility that, let's hypothetically say, we can only accommodate a bike lane on one side, is MTech still of the opinion of the previous MTech when we did Benton, where we have a climbing lane and then a shared use sharrows on the downhill side if the slope is enough that you can keep speed up? You know, obviously we wouldn't do that on flat ground, but you know, we have a lot of hill areas that may or may not have the appropriate right of way width. But if we could incorporate a climbing lane, is that sufficient with MTAC to have the climbing lane only and then a sharrow down?
I'm going to say there needs to be more context in that. And when I say that, I am comfortable mixing with traffic and sharing it, but the average biker is not.
Yeah,
I'm
not a biker.
Well, that's what we saw in the previous LRTP when they did the survey. They didn't want on-street facilities; they wanted shared use paths.
Yeah,
because the majority of the users that were surveyed, I believe, don't quote me because I could be wrong, were mostly, you know, families taking the kids out, and they'd rather be on a shared use path than on a bike lane everywhere. So
yeah, and that's
the discussion was, do you not put the bike lane in and take that 10 feet and put it over here and have a shared use path?
I think that's more beneficial. You know, because, you know, a bike lane that doesn't get used, Helen Avenue, a bike lane that doesn't get used just creates a drag strip, and then people drive too fast, and bikers, even a novice biker, will not feel comfortable on it. So, you know, if there is an area where there's a sharrow, it has to be like Front Street, where there is enough traffic calming features, complete street features, that actually cars only go at a max 20 miles an hour. So people feel relatively comfortable mixing with traffic. So, you know, like Benton Avenue, you know, like Carroll.
I mean, if Henderson on the hill on the south side wasn't as wide, and we could only fit in, say, one feature of a climbing lane versus, you know, 2 bike lanes, in that scenario, would you prefer getting the climbing lane and then sharing the ride down the hill, even though there's not a lot of traffic calming features? Or if we were to stripe something like that, one of the requirements would be to introduce some additional traffic calming features, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You know, and that's where, again, there's probably 3 options there, and my preference may not be the same preference of what the neighborhood wants, like getting across Henderson. I assume you're talking,
Like Henderson from LeGrand down to Euclid.
oh, that section?
Um,
I don't
Or
even,
you have to get out of your saddle to get up the hill,
unless you're on an e-bike.
unless you're on an e-bike.
yeah,
But coming down, there's enough grade there and until you get closer down to Euclid, I don't think that there's that much traffic there, but that scenario.
And I don't know if there's enough bike traffic on there where it would,
I'm just using that as a hypothetical so that
yeah.
if something came up like that.
I think,
You guys don't have to answer me.
yeah.
I think there's more context involved.
I'm just saying that if we could get, I don't want to say, if we could get policy direction so that we could implement in maybe our striping plan and our striping maintenance.
Okay.
That where we have the room for only 5 feet, that could we put in a climbing lane, versus, nothing, and where you're sharing the road climbing up the hill.
And Sharrow's on the.
And then Sharrow's on the down side, just like it is on Benton. And so that's just something to think about.
Yeah.
This doesn't have to be decided. It doesn't have to be a commission recommendation, but
No, I appreciate you asking the question.
Yeah.
That's
And
interesting.
the other one is, I see, Lambourne over by Lockheed Park. I mean, that is a huge wide road, and there's 5-foot bike lanes on there, but then the traffic lanes are still probably 15 feet wide. They're really wide. I've seen, after how many years I've been by that, I remember seeing one person on there because it stood out. It was some guy on his BMX bike, small wheels, headed down on it, because it's just it's not a comfortable environment.
so we're going to try something a little different on 11th this year after the chip seal. 11th obviously too narrow to accommodate bike lanes, parking, and the travel lanes. It's just, we've tried to do the math and it really just doesn't work. So, we can get rid of a parking lane if that's, but you can drive across it now. And I don't understand this, but the drivers on the north side tend to hug the curb on the north side, and that's typically where there's more parked cars. So you see this, jog around the cars, and then on the south side, the eastbound lanes, they straddle what would be the fog line, and they don't really get as close to. So what we're going to do is once we chip seal it, we're going to paint fog lines on there to see if we can condition drivers to stay in their lane.
I think that would be helpful because
Yeah,
I've seen, you're talking about the 11th west of Montana, the stuff that was just overlaid. Yeah. There's that apartment there, and people drive up on the curb, usually a truck there that is up on the curb, and even if there is I don't think there needs to be a fog line there, but I think it would be helpful in this instance because it would delineate the parking spaces, the parallel parking. So I do think it's warranted. Is there?
Does painting a center line on the road speed people up though?
I don't really think so.
I don't think so.
It kind of gives them a
Actually,
stay
so
on their own
this,
side.
I've actually thought about that too, is that even the paint on the road designates the narrowness, because what's happening there is, people park on the side and there's no parking on the park over the curb on the north side and then don't park on the south side. So you still have an artificially wide street there. And even if you put the fog line, the parallel parking sides, at least that gives a driver an impression of more narrowness than what's out there right
Well,
now.
the south side of 11th doesn't typically have, every once in a while, but it doesn't typically have that much parked traffic. It's only at that apartment that you're talking about where the pickup, and there's a house down the road that has another pickup that pulls up on those are typically the only people that park on 11th.
I think maybe you get more if you had a white line there.
We might,
Yeah.
or if, if it shows it that there's no parking there, then, maybe that's an opportunity to, remove parking. Put a bike lane on there. Or whatever, it's just one of those things that 11th is a little conundrum to me, looking at the driver behavior and how they drive that versus other roads.
Well, it's ultimately becomes Neil and the intersections that we're talking about.
Yes.
It's getting late here. I think we've got our budget recommendations. I'm going to just touch on a couple things here on the agenda, and then we'll call it a night here. Complete street implementation, we can defer further discussion on it. The MPO implementation. David, is there a schedule on when the planner position is going to be advertised at all?
Hoping in the next few weeks. We're still tweaking some of the job description. We're just looking at other examples to make sure that we capture everything.
And then can an MTAC member could an MTAC member be on the selection committee for that?
I can ask that.
Okay. Downtown multimodal plan recommendations. We kind of have Cruise Avenue. I've been back and forth with John Dendy, and I'm going to sit down and meet with him. But when I talked to him, he was fully on board with the Cruise Avenue as well too. So I'll just keep in touch with him. I've got him here. Member communications. This is just kind of a running list of future things to talk about. I did add on here the SAFE program in Bozeman. This, I think would be a good policy thing. There could be a lot of things in there, but actually Bozeman, I was really impressed with their SAFE acronym, Streets Are For Everyone plan. They've got, engineering standards in there, zoning revisions, bike education, policing. So they have the 4 Ps. Let's see, the fairgrounds repaving project. I don't think we need to talk anything on that. I did send some comments to the commission that they're going to use some ARPA funds there. That I'd like to see a non-motorized path from Custer Avenue to the exhibit hall, because it's just kind of a free-for-all through there. And then that sea of asphalt that's parking. The city has landscaping requirements for putting in trees, which
is part of the city, or is it?
The fairgrounds are in the city. Yes.
Really?
Yep. Because they're served by city water and sewer service.
Interesting.
Yep. And then the other part of that is there's a preliminary design for a roundabout at Custer and Henderson. And I, I think it was like an 80% plan. I support going for the 80% plan, but I'd like to see them. I'd almost like to see that roundabout go in before any discussion, because I just see Custer Avenue getting bogged down, and we've talked about it for a decade already. And can we at least, if we're going to go through an 80% effort, I'd like to see bring it to 100% effort for implementation, but that can be a future discussion. So just wanted to let people know that is on the horizon as well too.
That's a collaboration between the city and
county. On Custer?
Yeah, so it's
we're trading manpower and equipment to help pave the interior, and they're using some dollars to get the design.
Yeah, so the county is allocated their ARPA funds to reduce some of the paving at the fairgrounds, and it really get morphed into more stuff. So interesting. I've got temporary traffic calming measures on here. I think that can be a future discussion of maybe how we, can implement, the stuff that we talk about is, like the path from National to Argyle. Maybe that is a temporary striping thing, or the one to the Great Northern that we talked about on Hauser there. So, and then other schools, other city projects, that's just kind of placeholder stuff. Said we talked about the meetings, the 6 ward plan, still kind of waiting to get an update on that, but that's still in progress. Montana safety study, hopefully within a month she'll have that. The other thing I was going to mention to you guys, you've heard talk, you know, the MUTCD, Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, that just got updated in December of last year, and there is a giant leap forward in non-motorized bicycle facilities. And you know, like they actually got rid of like the 85% oil speed for urban environments. You know that they're, you know, that's, you know, you can look at that, but there should be a lot of other things that should be evaluated as well too. So, you know, the MUTCD kind of developed for interstates and then trickled down for application in areas that it shouldn't. But you know, the last update was 2009. This is a pretty big jump forward. You know, it's got EV stuff in there, and then we all, you know, with the EVs and, you know, the transportation industry is changing pretty rapidly. So they set it up that it should be updated every 4 years as well too, so it can be more responsive. But hopefully the MUTCD eliminates or minimizes bad decision making in the future. You know, yeah, it takes it less from a numerical standard to a narrative standard. You know,
Interesting.
So
ProAg was moved to final rule. Just been out there as guidelines.
okay. Let's see, any other public comment on any item not on the agenda?
I guess matter interest that the legislature's statutes that they enacted this year on density and you know, allowing ADUs everywhere were suspended by a court or something. Yeah, so I don't know if that's potentially a topic for future discussion or something in terms of you know, stuff that could be implemented by a city. You know, it was all going to be automatically.
The city already allows
it. We're all
Yeah, actually,
most of that stuff. And
the only impact we would really have is the no parking portion.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I think we're kind of. I mean, it overlaps kind of in our area of interest more in terms of, you know, we shouldn't have minimum parking requirements. We should, in some ways, and you know, there's, I guess it's a matter of zoning, and maybe it's not our business, but you know, we have some bad parking requirements in the city code, in my view, and maybe that's something for future discussions. You know, we can look at. Yeah, and that actually, you know, could be part of the SAFE plan.
Yeah.
That was part of Bozeman as they looked at city code revisions. And I've been, you know, lots of municipalities nationwide have been changing their parking minimums, getting rid of them in the last 5 years. So, yeah. And then, next meeting will be February 13th. But getting back to your point, I'd say Helena was actually very proactive a decade ago and actually got rid of lot size minimums. ADUs are allowed. I don't know where they are disallowed, but even if it's statewide, the city of Helena allows them, you know, so kudos to the city. And then, yeah. So moving on, yeah, February 13th going to be our next meeting. I'll get our action minutes sent, prepared here and get those sent to the commission. And then David, just keep us in the loop on budget items. So, okay. If there's nothing else, we run a little late, but great discussion. We'll adjourn. Agree. A second.
Do you want to do a vote on it?
You have a motion to adjourn. You really do.
technically, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if,
I think
yeah,
we've all.
unless
agreed
James
that we-
throws a fight on there, I'm not,
Yeah,
Stay till 8.
yeah.
thanks, James.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, and I hope you feel free that you should chime in whenever you need to if I don't specifically call on you as well too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, sorry. I agree with everything. I usually will chime in if I've got an issue.
Right,
Thanks, James.
thanks.
Take care.